news tonight, King Abdullah expresses deep sympathies for the victims of a Russian plane that crashed in Egypt. And Egyptian authorities say 2 black boxes were found, but it is too early to determine the cause of the crash. Turkey goes to the polls again tomorrow, with President Tayyip Erdogan hoping the ruling Justice and Development Party will win back the single-party majority it lost 5 months ago. And the Amman Group for the Future Dialogues launches an initiative dubbed One Nation in Face of Takfiris, with the aim of confronting terrorist ideology that threatens the nation's existence. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. His Majesty King Abdullah sent a cable to Russian President Vladimir Putin, offering his deep sympathies over the victims of a Russian plane crash in the Sinai region of Egypt today. In his cable, the king expressed his heartfelt condolences over the death of the passengers and crew on board. Russian President Vladimir Putin discussed the crash on the phone with Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who offered his deep condolences. Russia's Minister of Transport, Maxim Sokolov, said that claims the plane was hit by an anti-aircraft missile shot by a terrorist cannot be considered accurate. In a statement, Daesh had said they brought down the plane in response to Russian airstrikes in Syria. But both Egyptian and Russian authorities said it was too early to draw any conclusions about the cause of the crash. In a statement to media, Egyptian Prime Minister Sharif Ismail said it is too early to determine what caused the plane to go down, but that no irregular activity was believed in it.
What will determine what happened is the analysis of the black box data and experts' deductions. However, up until this point, there are no indications that anything out of the ordinary happened on this aircraft. All we can say is that it happened due to technical difficulties, and the team of experts are the ones who will be able to prove or deny this.
Ismail later visited the crash site as Egyptian aviation authorities announced they have found the 2 black boxes on the aircraft. The Russian airliner carrying 224 passengers crashed into a mountainous area of Egypt's Sinai Peninsula shortly after losing radar contact near cruising altitude, killing all abroad. The Airbus A321, operated under the brand name Metrojet, was flying from the Sinai Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh to St. Petersburg in Russia when it went down in central Sinai soon after daybreak. A North Sinai security source said initial examination suggested that the crash could have been caused by a tactical fault. Egyptian sources said the plane landed in a vertical fashion, contributing to the scale of devastation and burning. Fresh clashes erupted between Palestinian youth and Israeli forces in the West Bank city of Hebron after thousands attended a funeral procession for 5 people killed in a recent wave of violence. Israel had released their bodies late yesterday. At least 10 Palestinians were injured from live bullets in Hebron, according to Palestinian medical sources, in retaliation for some stone throwing. In the West Bank city of Jenin, Palestinians held another funeral procession for 18-year-old Mahmoud Nazzal, who was shot dead earlier today by Israeli forces, claiming he was carrying a knife. Yesterday, the Palestinian Health Ministry said an 8-month-old baby died in the West Bank as a result of inhaling tear gas fired by Israeli military in the area. Since the latest unrest began on October 1st, at least 65 Palestinians have been shot dead by Israelis. Many were teens. In the ongoing war against terrorism, the U.S.-led coalition launched 7 airstrikes against Daesh targets in Syria and 14 in Iraq. The coalition said in a statement that 4 of the strikes in Syria were conducted around Deir ez-Zor, where they hit Daesh crude oil collection point and a petroleum pump. Others landed near Daesh stronghold of Raqqa and Al-Hol. In Iraq, 4 airstrikes near Ramadi hit tactical units and weapons and, according to the statement, denied the terrorist group access to the terrain. The coalition also hit targets in Sinjar, Al-Qim, Kisk, Mosul, Qayyara, Sultan Abdullah and Tel Afar. Turkish jets also launched bombing raids against Daesh targets in Syria, said a senior government official a day before Turks are due to vote in a parliament election. The official told media the American jets were standing by to assist, and all aircraft involved in the operation returned safely. On the ground in Syria, a U.S.-backed Syrian rebel alliance announced a fresh offensive against Daesh in the northeast province of Hasakeh. It was the first declared operation by the alliance, named the Democratic Forces of Syria, which joins together a U.S.-backed Kurdish militia and several Syrian rebel groups since it announced its formation earlier this month. A spokesman for the alliance announced the operation in a message posted on YouTube, saying the aim is to liberate the countryside of Hasakeh. The campaign would continue until all occupied areas in Hasakeh are freed from Daesh, he said. The decision by U.S. President Barack Obama to send special forces to Syria is strictly focused on fighting Daesh and does not signify the United States is entering Syria's civil war, said U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. The United States will deploy dozens of special operations troops to northern Syria from next month to advise opposition forces in their fight against the terrorist group. The decision is seen as a major policy shift for President Obama and a step he has long resisted to avoid getting dragged into another war in the region. Kerry was speaking during an official visit to Kyrgyzstan after attending international talks in Vienna on ending the 4.5-year conflict in Syria.
President Obama has made a very straightforward and simple decision entirely in keeping with his originally stated policy that we must defeat and destroy Daesh. It is not a decision to enter into Syria's civil war. It is not an action or a choice focused on Assad. It is focused exclusively on Daesh and on augmenting our ability to be able to more rapidly attack Daesh and do a better job of eliminating Daesh and its influence in that region.
UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, for his part, said disagreement over the fate of Assad should not hold up a humanitarian ceasefire or a wider deal to end the war in Syria. Speaking at a news conference in Geneva, he said the future of Syria and the peace talks should not be held up by the future of one man. On the fate of President Bashar al-Assad, he said it is up to the Syrian people to decide his future. Ban spoke after issuing a call with the head of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Peter Maurer, for states to stop wars. Ban and Maurer made a joint warning for states to stop conflict, respect international law, and aid refugees. Ban blasted the world's inhumanity and paralysis in the face of the migrant crisis, saying this foots the very mere existence of the United Nations. The two men also called for states to rein armed groups and hold them accountable for abuses and to stop the use of heavy weapons in populated areas. Hundreds of refugees awaited at the border to cross from Austria to Germany as the influx of migrants continued. The mayor of a small German border town of Wegskied said that someone should tell German Chancellor Angela Merkel that they have reached a limit. At the moment, Austria drives the migrants to the border, where they have to leave the buses and wait for German buses to drive them over the border into Germany. A federal police officer described the atmosphere on the border as good as migrants continue to arrive at the border. Germany is taking in more migrants than any other EU state. It expects 800,000 to 1 million people to arrive this year, many of whom are from war zones in the region, Africa and Afghanistan. Turkey goes to the polls again tomorrow, with President Tayyip Erdogan hoping the ruling Justice and Development Party will win back the single-party majority it lost 5 months ago. The outcome of the second parliamentary election this year is seen as important not only for Turkey's domestic stability and its role in Syria and Europe's migration crisis, but also for Erdogan himself. More opinion polls suggest that AKP will struggle to win a majority and will be forced into coalition, potentially with the main secular opposition, Republican People's Party. This more.
Turkey goes to the polls on Sunday for the second time in a year, with the outcome far from certain. The country's in the grip of a slowing economy, deep social divisions, suicide bombings, renewed conflict in the Kurdish southeast and an influx of migrants. Opinion polls suggest President Tayyip Erdogan's AK party won't win back the majority it lost in June. International Relations Associate Professor Dimitrios Triantafylou says a coalition could be the best solution to keep Erdogan's hunger for power in check.
I would like to see at least, I think, a coalition between the first party, the AKP, and at least the second party, the CHP, because it's the one at least that still represents a very powerful segment of Turkish population that is secular and has not changed its tune when it comes to Western values and norms and Turkish accession to the European Union.
Other rival party leaders have said a coalition deal would depend on guarantees from Erdogan that he wouldn't try to reach beyond the constitutional limits of his power. European Policy Centre analyst Amanda Paul says Turkish democracy itself would be at the greatest risk from an AKP comeback.
Turkish society becoming led by an authoritarian ruler and becoming consolidated. I mean, this is the biggest risk if the AKP come back as a majority and Erdogan is unable to implement his executive presidency ideal.
Allies in Europe and the US want a stable Turkey, but if the outcome emboldens Erdogan in his ambitions, they can do little beyond offering words of caution.
Bir bayrak rüzgar bekliyor isimli şiirini oku.
Back here at home, Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour said there are no political goals behind the general population and housing census due to start on November 30 and run until December 10th. The census, he stressed, involved economic, social, cultural and humanitarian dimensions rather than political aims, and it is not related to resettlement whatsoever. Speaking at the 10th Government Leaders Forum organized by the Ministry of Public Sector Development, he said all countries across the world, without exception, run a census more or less every 10 years, and Jordan is not different. Mansour said the census data will be confidential and will be used only for statistical purposes, and that no citizen will be affected since the census will be about numbers, not names. Minister of Public Sector Development Khalif Al-Khawalde and Director of Transparency International also addresses the forum.
Based on the directive of His Majesty King Abdullah II, this meeting today is a part of the government efforts to enhance Jordan ranks in international indicators, especially those related to transparency, openness and anti-corruption. International indicators are very important to policy and decision making, and they play a major role in describing Jordan as is situation in different fields and illustrate the impact of policy and decision adopted. They are also considered a mere reference for the donors to determine which countries should be a target for investment, donations, grants, loans, and international relations and cooperations.
Your commitment to be the best you possibly can be in your region, as well as the Arab-speaking world and beyond, so eloquently articulated by the Prime Minister to me, I think is a very important basis to move forward from. When the Prime Minister said to me on Wednesday morning that you don't want to be pushed, you want to lead reforms ahead of the curve, that you, as a country with limited resources, cannot afford to lose more resources because of corruption, I felt inspired by that, and I think that is the basis that you need to move forward.
The Amman Group for Future Dialogue launched an initiative dubbed One Nation in Face of Takfiris, with the announced aim of confronting terrorist Takfiri ideology. Head of the group, Bilal Al-Tal, said in a press conference in Amman that the Takfiri ideology forms an existential threat to the whole nation, and therefore we as Muslim and Christians stand united in defending our nation. The initiative also aims at reviving the concept of the nation and its unity in the mind and conscience of people to prevent Takfiris from seeking to sow sedition in the nation. The initiative seeks to set up a plan for comprehensive political, economic and social reform in the region through a model state and society they seek to establish. The group also seeks to conduct a dialogue at the level of the nation to achieve the aspired change. U.S. President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle welcomed trick-or-treaters at the White House a day before Halloween. They handed out candy to children from local schools and the children of military families. The White House grounds were decorated in an enchanted forest theme and costume acrobat performing on stilts. The kids were dressed as superheroes, fairy princesses, characters from Star Wars films, and even a tiny Pope Francis. A White House press release divulged the content of a president's candy basket, which included Hershey Kisses, fruit bars, and a box of White House M&Ms. Petra Kvitova stunned Maria Sharapova 6-3, 7-6 in a second semi-final of the WTA Finals in Singapore, booking her first place in tomorrow's decider against Agnieszka Radwanska. The match pitted two former WTA Finals champions against each other, and they traded early breaks before settling into a baseline battle until the Czech edged ahead in the seventh game of the opening set. The 2011 champion was now in full control, setting up 3 match points with a bombing serve, and then Sharapova sent a forehand sailing over the baseline. Kvitova had completed the most remarkable second set around. Top seed Roger Federer stayed on course for 7th title at his home tournament in Basel, but was given a slight scare by David Goffin as he prevailed 6-3, 3-6, 6-1 to reach the Swiss indoor semi-final. The Belgian thoroughly deserved to level in the second, and Federer had to shift gears to race through the final set, with the extra backing of his home crowd a definite factor. Federer's semi-final opponent will be Jack Sock, after the American overcome compatriot Donald Young 5-7, 4-6, 6-2. And finally, relatively cold conditions continue in most regions for the rest of tonight, with cloudy skies and northeasterly moderate winds. Tomorrow, fair weather prevail in most parts of the kingdom, with light scattered rains expected in southern and eastern regions. Winds will be northeasterly moderate to fresh, with a high of 24 Celsius forecast in Amman. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect moderate conditions tomorrow, with northerly moderate to brisk winds and slightly choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to end the news, here's a recap of our top stories. King Abdullah expresses deep sympathies for the victims of a Russian plane that crashed in Egypt, and Egyptian authorities say 2 black boxes were found, but it is too early to determine the cause of the crash. Turkey goes to the polls again tomorrow, with President Tayyip Erdogan hoping the ruling Justice and Development Party will win back the single-party majority it lost 5 months ago. And the Amman Group for Future Dialogue launches an initiative dubbed One Nation in Face of Takfiris, with the aim of confronting terrorist ideology that threatens the nation's existence. And with this we come to an end. I'm Farah Ajlouni. Thank you for watching and have a good night.